Hello class, this is your teacher Mr. McDougall with your next Photoshop tutorial. For this tutorial I want to talk about a very specific tool slash filter that's often the subject of a lot of controversy because it has the power to display fake images. Not necessarily like the generative AI, but you'll see what I mean in just a second. People use the Liquify tool to change the shape of their bodies and present fake versions of themselves. So we're going to experiment with this tool a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. And we're just going to briefly talk about some of the ethical decisions we have to face sometimes when we're using this tool. So let me give you a couple of examples. So in this first one, we have the published photo of Mariah Carey. There's a photo of her that was published in the magazines and the tabloids, and she looks fine. But we can see the original photo. This is the original one before the published one, and you can see all of the things that were tweaked on her. They fixed her jawline a little bit, they pulled her waist in, more definition in the legs, all over skin change. So the Liquify tool is part of that, among other things. So this is what she really had looked like, but this is what was presented, and this is where we can cross the line hypothetically when it comes to presenting the real version of ourselves. Let's look at another example. There's a underwear photo of an underwear model called Justin Bieber that he did for Calvin Klein. This was the original photo that was taken, but then this is the one that ended up on the ad. So you can see that they took quite a few liberties with certain things. They made him a little bit bigger in more ways than one, and this is the one they chose to display in the ad. But as you can tell in the before and after comparison, that the one they showed is not real. So they're trying to pass off this fake fantasy, so to speak, of what someone would look like with the underwear. So there are a lot of people who are more body positive, like Zendaya, for example. She did a photo shoot, and she was unaware that they had made Photoshop changes to her body when they posted the photo. So she posted the before and after, calling out the magazine for being lied to, essentially, or posting a fake photo. So this is the original photo that was taken, and then this is the one that was posted. You can see there's some changes in her leg, her hair color. There's a few things they tucked in her waist right here. The waists are different. So there's a few ways they tweaked her a little bit. But she is very body positive, and she actually called them out to bring more attention to it. And I agree with Zendaya on presenting the truest version of yourself. So when it comes to Photoshop, in my opinion, is that it's okay to Photoshop something as long as it's obviously Photoshop, or we're not trying to pass off a fake version of ourselves or trying to trick people. If we have a Photoshop image, people must know that it is clearly Photoshopped, which we'll do right now, and we're going to make it obviously Photoshop and not try to pass it off as real. So what we're going to do with the Liquify tool is I'm going to show you a couple ways you can have a little bit of fun with it, but I just want you to be careful because you can get into some tricky situations if you're trying to make things real that are not. So let's use the Liquify tool on some of these files. I've given you a lot to play with, and I'll show you the different way it works. And it's kind of a tool and a filter at the same time, and I'll explain what that means. So the first thing we're going to do so we don't cause any permanent damage is we're going to make sure that this is a smart object. So the two ways I showed you to do it is either right-click and do Convert to Smart Object, or Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. Either way gives you the same result. Right here, we've turned this into a smart object. So let's go to Liquify. It's under the Filter tab, and it has its own category right here called Liquify. So click on that, and it will take a second. It's going to open up a brand new menu. So with the Liquify tool, you have a series of different types of brushes over here, and all of the brushes use the same shortcuts as any other brush. You can use those bracket keys on your keyboard to increase or decrease the size of the brush. We're going to start with this top tool right here, which is the default one called the Forward Warp tool. What the Forward Warp tool does is it just pushes things around. So sometimes what I like to do with it is, I'll zoom in a little bit. With the Forward Warp tool, you can see I'm going to click and drag my mouse to push things down, and you can see how his arm got pushed in right there. So what I could do is I could push things. I like to do it with clothes and just kind of fix wrinkles sometimes, but I'm going to start very lightly. I'm going to show you what can happen. So I push things in. I'm kind of shaping the edges of his body right there. So if I wanted to fix these parts, I can push in like that. If you go too far, what will happen is you can do something like this. If I push, click, and drag, I can do that. I could push it way too far, and that's obviously not what his foot is supposed to look like. So if we want to fix something, other than Command Z, another thing we could do is come back up here to the Reconstruct tool. So if you click on Reconstruct tool, the tool will do exactly that. It will reconstruct an area back to the original. So if I click and hold my mouse right now with the Reconstruct tool, anything I draw over, if I just go over it a few times, it will take it back exactly the way it was originally before I messed it up with the Warp tool. So let's play with a couple of others. There's a few on here we'll not go through all of them, but we'll go through most of them. So with this one, the twirl clockwise tool, if we go to the twirl, this one's pretty fun. Anywhere you click and hold your mouse will twirl or twist that area. So let's say with this foot right here, if I click and hold, you can see what it's doing is it's twirling the area around and just kind of twisting it. Not a lot of uses, but this is pretty fun. So you can do that one. The other one you can play with is the pucker tool. You can see the pucker tool is right here. We click on that one. That will make an area smaller. So let's say I came over here and I wanted to make his fist smaller. Click right here. If I click and hold, it will pucker the area and make it smaller like that. So now he's got a little tiny hand. So the pucker will suck an area in, make it tiny. The opposite of that is the bloat tool. So if I go to the bloat tool right here, this does the opposite. This makes an area bigger. So if I click and hold this area, you can see it's expanding it. So he's getting a giant Hulk hands fist. If I click around it like that. So as you anywhere you click, it just makes the area grow bigger. So maybe I want to give him a giant head. The longer you hold, the bigger the area will get. You can make it look pretty weird. Look at him. He's so handsome now. I like it. A couple other ones we'll talk about is the freeze and thaw. So the freeze area, if we click on this one, this will allow me to draw an area that will be protected from any of the other tools. So let's say I freeze right here. So I just brush that area. So anywhere that's in red is frozen, which means it will be unaffected by the other tools. So if I go to back to the forward warp tool and I try to push this down, see I'm trying to push this back and forth, everything's being pushed except for this red area right here. So now I can't get to that area, that's protected. If I want to remove it, I go to the thaw mask right here. So the thaw one, anything I cover with the thaw will unfreeze. So I draw around there, and now it's unfrozen, now it's in the danger zone, now I can mess around with it like that. So feel free to use these tools to just kind of mess around, doing whatever you want to this guy, and liquefying the heck out of him. And just play around. Once you're satisfied, you can click OK. And you can see our original. It's a smart filter, so it can be turned on and off. And you can see the beautiful work that we have created. Publish this in a magazine like Mariah Carey and try to pass it off like it's real. So we do stuff like this just to have some fun and be silly. And this is okay because obviously it's Photoshop. So I want you to do the same thing on Liquify 2. Convert her into a smart object, use the Liquify tool, use the various tools, and just have fun messing around, stretching out. Kind of like we did with the puppet warp. Just do whatever you want. And then join me back here on number 3 when you're done. So pause the video, mess with Liquify 2, and then come back over to this one. Okay, now that we're on this one, we're going to do something slightly different for this one. For this one, we're going to be a little bit more realistic so you can see what I'm talking about in my slideshow examples. So let's convert this to a smart object. And then let's go to the Liquify filter. Filter, Liquify. So for this one, let's try to keep it real so you can see what I mean and help this guy out a little bit. So I'm going to use my forward warp tool, the regular one, make it pretty big. And we're going to take him to the gym for a second. We're going to push in his stomach. So I'm going to click and drag and push in his stomach. Let's just do him a little bit of favor. I'm clicking around different areas to try and make sure it stays even. You don't want to create like a divot in the stomach like this, which looks unnatural. So let's just keep pushing it in. I'm clicking and letting go of my mouse. You don't want to click and hold and drag up and down like that because that's not going to look real either. So just very lightly, just like with all our other brush tools, very lightly, slowly clicking and dragging. And then make my brushes smaller. Adjust the size as you go. I don't want to, as I get closer so I get more detail. I don't want to shrink his jeans or anything. There we go. That's looking a lot better. Look at that. Lost all that weight already. Let's help him out with a couple other spots. Let's do his back too. Back's looking a little out there. Let's fix it slightly. Just be gentle with it. We're going easy on this one. There we go. And then let's help him with his jawline. I could tell that he's a little self-conscious about that. Let's kind of just push that in a little bit, shall we? There we go. I might have done that too far. There we go. Just helping him out, not going too extreme. There, look at that. Let's do another favor for him. Let's give him the Justin Bieber treatment. Let's use that bloat tool, and let's buff him up a little bit, shall we? We can use the bloat on these biceps. I'm going to click and hold. There we go. Get those guns out a little bit. Super natural. Not going to go too far. Do want to keep it somewhat natural for this one just so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's puff out his chest a little bit, shall we? Excellent. Look how much stronger and better he is now. So let's click OK. So this one I wanted to keep real so you can see what I'm talking about in a before and after. This one looks realistic. You could pass it off. This was the before, and this was the after with no gym required. So again, if you just showed this to someone for this first time without them knowing the before pose, they might think that this is the real version. So this is what it could be like if you keep it realistic. However, you're not going to keep it realistic for the other ones because I'm going to let you play around again. Like number 4, I give you permission to play around and liquify this guy however you would like. You don't have to keep it realistic for this one. But have fun. Make sure you convert into a smart object, liquify them up, and then meet me again at the next one called Neural 01. Okay, so on Neural 01, we're going to mess around with a couple versions of these for these neural photos. We're going to do something similar to Liquify, but a slightly different category. So it's going to start the same by converting it to a smart object. Let's go up to Filter and Liquify. And then when you're dealing with faces specifically, which is why I've given you these ones, instead of messing around with these tools, which you can still use these tools. However, there's a whole other category on this side for faces, face aware liquify. Yours might be collapsed. If not, open it right here where it says face aware. And it'll say face number 1 because there's only one face detected. And we can mess around with features of the face, like the eye size. So right here where it says eye size, you can look at his eyes as I adjust these sliders. His eye is getting bigger and smaller. Right now it's just the one eye that's being affected, but if you click this chain link, it will link both of them. So now both of them are being affected at the same time. So just click these links if you want both eyes to be affected. I can change the height. I can change the width and the tilt and the distance. I can do all of this stuff. We can even mess around with the nose. Maybe we want to fix the nose, widen it up, thin it up, and the mouth. He needs more of a smile. Look at that. Look how happy he is. Or maybe not. Maybe more serious upper lip. There we go. Just mess around however you would like. Maybe a small mouth, maybe a thinner mouth. And then even face shape right here. There's a whole tab for face shape. We can increase his forehead, maybe give him a 5 head, maybe less, maybe more. However you like it. Just like with the Liquify tool, I want you to play around with it, all of these features, making him into a totally different person. Here we go. I think that looks beautiful. How about that? Before and after. I'll leave it up to you to tell me which one is better. The other thing we can do with the second one, turn that guy back on. Similarly with the second one, along with the Liquify, is another tab. Let's go to Convert to Smart Object before we forget. Go up to Filter. And relatively new is one called Neural Filters. So this will be very similar to the face one that we just did. Go to Neural Filters, click that one, and you'll see this option pop up right here. So the one you're going to do is Smart Portrait. Yours might be a cloud, and you might have to click the cloud to download it, but it should download in just a second. So click the little cloud to download Smart Portrait and turn that on, and it will pop this up right here. So this is similar to the generative AI. It's going to search the internet to find references to increase these options right here. So let's say happiness. Maybe he's too happy and I need to take it down. So I'm going to slide this happiness slider down. It's going to load. It's going to scour the internet like generative AI to find examples, and it will change his face. Sometimes it takes a minute in the beginning, but it usually doesn't take that long afterwards. Processing, and you'll see in just a second. Look at that. Now he's slightly less happy. Maybe he looks too young and I want to make his age a little higher. You never know what you're going to get. Look at that. Now he looks like a little bit older, but he looks happy again. Let's fix that. Thin his hair out. All of these right here you can play with, like expressions, make him look more surprised or angrier. It's always going to be different depending on what you do or the examples. We can even turn his head direction. So right now he's looking forward. I can have his head direction looking more this way. See, it changes ever so slightly. Sometimes it will change a lot. Sometimes it won't change very much, but that's okay. Feel free to mess around with it however you'd like, and then you can click OK. You could even combine this with the Liquify. So we've done the neural filters. We can go back up to Liquify, and we could even continue messing around with this. We could do everything we just did and then some. We can neural him, and then we can use the Liquify feature to mess around with even more options. So there's a lot you could do. Sometimes it comes clean, sometimes it's not. You can see there's a little bit of weird neck tan line right there. But that's okay. This is where you have the fun of experimentation. When you have more than one person, like this one, let's convert to a smart object. You can do the same thing, except you can do it one face at a time. So let's do the same thing. Let's go to Filter, Neural Filters. And when you turn this one on, when you ever have multiple faces, it's going to take a second because it has to detect all of the faces that are present. And then you get to choose which one that you want to work on. Go. Not sure why this is taking so long. Let's just pause it and come back then. All right, so now it's working in, so let's turn on Smart Portrait. So when you turn on Smart Portrait, you'll see right here, selected face. You can come up here and it will detect where the faces are so you can tell which one that you're editing. So if I want to edit this guy's face, I can make him even super happier or older, thicker hair, all the stuff that you want to mess around with, and it will do that to that guy. And then once you're satisfied with that, we can move on to the next one as well. So it'll process, make any adjustments needed depending on how I adjusted the sliders. See, look at that, totally different guy now. You can do that to the other one. So if I do that to this guy, same thing. You can edit each one. And you can do the same thing on the Liquify effects as well. If we go up to Filter and Liquify, when there's multiple faces involved, it will do the same thing. So you can see right here where we originally saw face 1. If I click here, it's detected 5 faces, so you can see which face you will be editing. So now if I do this one, mess around with face number 2, it looks like face 2 is this girl right here. I can see her eyes changing. So now you can mess around with everybody's face. So feel free to mess around with all their faces however you would like. And you can also do that on the last file as well. So whoever this guy is, Neural 04, use the neural filters and the Liquify tool however you wish to create a new face altogether. I give you permission to go as hard as you want, do whatever you want with those 2 tools. Okay? So as always, have fun just messing around, exploring what you can do with these various tools. Take screenshots of all your work and turn them in and have fun. Let me know if you have any questions.